September 1972. Tokyo Motor Show. A green and black beast sits under harsh spotlights, its four chrome exhaust pipes gleaming like polished daggers. Honda engineers circle it like vultures, their faces pale with disbelief. Yamaha executives whisper in hushed, panicked tones. And in the corner, Kawasaki's team stands proud, knowing they've just detonated a nuclear bomb in the motorcycle world. This wasn't just another bike. This was the Z1900, a machine so revolutionary, so brutally powerful, that it would rewrite the rules of motorcycling forever. But buried beneath its legendary status lies a darker truth. A story of corporate rivalry, engineering one-upmanship, and a motorcycle that forced an entire industry to rethink what was possible. This is the shocking story of the engine that made giants tremble, birth of a monster. The year was 1968. Honda ruled the motorcycle world with an iron fist. Their CB754 was still in development, but whispers of a revolutionary four-cylinder, 750 cubic centimeter superbike were already sending shockwaves through Japan's motorcycle industry. At Kawasaki's Akashi factory, a small team of engineers huddled around blueprints, their faces grim with determination. They had a problem, a big one. Kawasaki was the underdog, the scrappy upstart trying to compete with Honda's engineering empire and Yamaha's racing pedigree. Their biggest bike was a measly 650 cubic centimeter twin that wheezed like an old man climbing stairs. Meanwhile, Honda was preparing to unleash a 750 cubic centimeter four-cylinder monster that would make every other manufacturer look like they were building lawnmowers. But Kawasaki had a secret weapon, Project New York Steak. Engine design chief Gyoichi Ben Inamura, designer Norimasa Ken Tada, and product planning manager Sam Tanagashima led a team with a singular mission: build a bike so powerful, so advanced, that it would make Honda's CB750 look like a child's toy. The mission was simple but audacious: leapfrog Honda's revolutionary CB750. The problem? They had less than 4 years to do it, a fraction of Honda's budget, and a management team that thought they were completely insane. The Honda Challenge. Here's where the story gets interesting. Kawasaki had actually been developing their own 750 cubic centimeter DOHC four-cylinder motorcycle, often referred to as the N600 project. But when Honda unveiled the CB750 in 1968, Kawasaki made a critical decision. They went back to the drawing board. Rather than release a bike that would be directly compared to Honda's groundbreaking CB750, Kawasaki delayed their launch and completely reimagined their approach. If Honda was going to dominate the 750cc class, Kawasaki would create an entirely new category. Where Honda played it safe with 750 cubic centimeters, Kawasaki went nuclear with 903 cubic centimeters. Where Honda used a single overhead cam, Kawasaki engineered a double overhead cam design that screamed like a Banshee at 8,500 RPM. Where Honda built a gentleman's touring bike, Kawasaki forged a weapon of mass acceleration. The numbers were staggering: 82 horsepower at 8,500 RPM, 53 pound-feet of torque at 7,000 revolutions per minute, a top speed that kissed 130 to 135 miles per hour, numbers that made Honda's CB750 look positively pedestrian. But the real genius was in the details. Kawasaki's engineers didn't just build a bigger engine, they built a smarter engine. The Z1's DOHC head featured larger valves, more aggressive cam timing, and a compression ratio that pushed the boundaries of pump gas. The result was an engine that didn't just make more power, it made power everywhere. The Honda made peak power and then fell off a cliff, recalled motorcycle journalist in a 1974 road test. The Kawasaki pulled like a freight train from 3,000 RPM all the way to redline. The engineering revolution. The Z1's engine wasn't just powerful, it was revolutionary. This was the first mass-market Japanese motorcycle to feature a double overhead camshaft design in a large-capacity engine. The Z1's engine was a masterclass in mechanical engineering. The bottom end featured a forged steel crankshaft running in 5 main bearings. Overkill for a street bike, but perfect for the kind of abuse Kawasaki knew riders would dish out. The cylinders were cast iron sleeves in an aluminum block, providing the perfect balance of heat dissipation and durability. Then came the head, and this is where Kawasaki showed their genius. The double overhead cam design wasn't just about power, it was about control. With separate cams for intake and exhaust valves, Kawasaki's engineers could optimize valve timing with surgical precision. The intake cams opened the valves early and kept them open long, cramming as much fuel and air into the cylinders as physics would allow. The exhaust cams were equally aggressive, clearing spent gases with ruthless efficiency. The result? An engine that breathed like a racehorse. At 8,500 RPM, the Z1's engine was moving enough air to power a small aircraft. The 4 Mikuni carburetors, each one perfectly synchronized, fed the beast with mechanical precision. No fuel injection, no electronic aids, just pure mechanical symphony. Kawasaki's transmission was equally impressive. The Z1 featured a robust 5-speed gearbox that handled the engine's power with confidence. The gearing allowed for unusually long, usable pulls in each gear, making the bike both a stoplight drag racer and a comfortable highway cruiser. The clutch was built to last. Kawasaki engineers knew that 82 horsepower would demand a serious clutch, so they developed a multi-plate wet clutch that could handle the abuse. The clutch basket was machined from billet aluminum. The plates were oversized, and the springs were calibrated to provide just enough slip to prevent wheel spin while maintaining positive engagement. The Honda reaction. When the Z1 debuted at the 1972 Tokyo Motor Show, Honda's reaction was swift and serious. They recognized a genuine threat. The CB750, Honda's pride and joy, suddenly looked outclassed. Where the Honda made 67 horsepower, the Kawasaki made 82. Where the Honda topped out at around 120 miles per hour, the Kawasaki hit 130 to 135. Where the Honda felt refined and civilized, the Kawasaki felt like barely contained violence. But the numbers only told part of the story. Motorcycle journalists who rode both bikes back-to-back were unanimous in their verdict. The Z1 wasn't just faster, it was better. The engine was smoother, the transmission was slicker, and the overall package felt like it had been engineered by people who actually rode motorcycles. Honda's response was methodical, but delayed. Throughout the mid-1970s, Honda continued to refine the CB750 platform with various iterations, but they didn't have a direct competitor to the Z1's displacement and performance. It wasn't until 1979 to 1980 that Honda introduced the CB900F, Bull Door, a clear response to Kawasaki's big bore dominance. By then, Kawasaki had already evolved the Z1 into the KZ900 and then the KZ1000, maintaining their performance edge and forcing Honda to play catch-up. The Street Wars. By 1973, the Z1 was unleashed on American streets, and the impact was immediate. This wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a statement. Drag strips across America became battlegrounds, where Z1s humiliated everything in their path. Harley-Davidson's biggest bikes looked like they were standing still. Honda's CB750S were left gasping in clouds of tire smoke. Even Yamaha's 2-stroke rockets couldn't match the Z1's brutal acceleration. The numbers were impressive. Quarter-mile times in the low 12-second range, 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 4 seconds. Top speeds that required more courage than most riders possessed. The Z1 wasn't just fast, it was scary fast. I remember the first time I rode a Z1, recalled legendary motorcycle journalist in a 2005 retrospective. It was like grabbing a lightning bolt. The power was so sudden, so violent, that it redefined what I thought a motorcycle could be. But the Z1's dominance went beyond straight-line speed. The engine's broad power band made it devastating in real-world riding conditions. While other superbikes required constant gear changes to stay in their narrow power zones, the Z1 pulled like a tractor from 3,000 RPM and kept pulling until the tachometer needle kissed the red zone. Street racers loved it. Police hated it. The Z1 became the weapon of choice for a generation of riders who treated public roads like their personal racetracks. Its distinctive 4-pipe exhaust note became the soundtrack of rebellion, echoing through urban canyons and suburban streets at all hours of the night. Insurance companies began taking notice. Accident rates among Z1 riders were concerning, not because the bike was dangerous, but because it made dangerous speeds so effortlessly accessible. A twist of the throttle could transform a law-abiding citizen into a speeder, and many riders discovered they lacked the self-control to resist temptation. The racing legacy. The Z1's impact on the racetrack was equally profound. It set records from day one. In 1972, a nearly stock Z1 set a 24-hour endurance record at Daytona, proving that the bike wasn't just powerful, it was reliable. This was a machine that could run at near racing speeds for hours on end without missing a beat. Yoshimura-tuned Z1s became legends in their own right. The legendary tuner Pop Yoshimura saw the Z1's potential immediately. His modified Z1S set impressive lap speeds at tracks around the world, establishing Kawasaki as a force to be reckoned with in production-based racing. The Z1 platform evolved into a racing dynasty. While the original Z1 was impressive, its descendants were dominant. The KZ1000, a direct evolution of the Z1, became the backbone of Kawasaki's AMA Superbike program. In the hands of riders like Eddie Lawson, who won back-to-back AMA Superbike championships in 1981 and 1982 on KZ1000-based machines, the Z1's DNA proved unbeatable. The racing success wasn't just about power. The engine's robust construction meant it could handle the kind of abuse that would destroy lesser machines. While other bikes grenaded their transmissions and seized their pistons, the Z1-derived engines just kept running, lap after lap, race after race. Kawasaki's racing program was surgical in its precision. They identified the Z1's few weaknesses, mainly in the suspension and braking departments, and addressed them with military efficiency. The result was a bike that could not only generate devastating speed, but could also handle and stop with the precision of a scalpel. By the late 1970s, the Z1's descendants had won everything worth winning. From endurance races to drag racing titles, the green machines were everywhere, and they were winning everything. Honda's racing program, once invincible, was forced to develop entirely new platforms to compete. The cultural impact. Beyond engineering, the Z1 transformed motorcycle culture itself. It created the modern superbike. Before the Z1, motorcycles were categorized by their intended use: touring, commuting, off-road. The Z1 created a new category, the superbike, a machine built for no purpose other than generating face-melting speed and adrenaline. It changed how people thought about Japanese motorcycles. Before the Z1, Japanese bikes were seen as reliable but soulless, practical transportation rather than objects of desire. The Z1 had charisma, personality, and a mechanical brutality that inspired passion rather than mere appreciation. The Z1 was the first Japanese bike with soul, wrote legendary motorcycle journalist. It wasn't just fast, it was exciting. It made noises and vibrations that connected with riders on a primal level. The Z1 also created a new type of rider, the superbike enthusiast. These weren't traditional motorcyclists who valued mechanical sympathy and smooth riding. They were performance junkies who measured their worth in quarter-mile times and top-speed runs. They wore full-face helmets and leather racing suits, not open-face helmets and denim jackets. The Z1 dominated motorcycle media. It won Motorcycle News Machine of the Year multiple times between 1973 and 1976, cementing its status as the bike to beat. Every motorcycle magazine featured it on their cover, and every comparison test used it as the benchmark against which all other bikes were judged. It established the UJM, Universal Japanese Motorcycle Template. The Z1's basic configuration: transverse inline 4, double overhead cams, 4 carburetors, 5-speed transmission, became the template that Japanese manufacturers would follow for decades. The collector's obsession. Today, the Z1 has achieved mythical status among collectors. Original, unrestored examples command impressive prices. Top-condition early Z1s have sold for tens of thousands of dollars at auction, far more than most Japanese motorcycles of the era. Even project bikes with missing parts routinely sell for significant sums, reflecting the bike's historical importance and the scarcity of unmolested examples. The Z1's value has increased steadily over the past decade. This appreciation outpaces many other Japanese motorcycles of the era, including Honda's CB750. Collectors who once dismissed Japanese bikes as mass-produced appliances now view the Z1 as a blue-chip investment, on par with Italian exotics and British classics. But the Z1's collectability isn't just about investment potential. For many owners, the Z1 represents a connection to a simpler time in motorcycle engineering. Before electronic aids, before fuel injection, before computers mediated the relationship between rider and machine, there's a purity to the Z1 that modern bikes can't match, explained a prominent vintage motorcycle collector. When you twist the throttle, you're directly controlling the flow of fuel and air. There's no computer deciding what you really meant to do. This mechanical honesty has created a cult following that transcends generations. Young riders who grew up with fuel-injected, computer-controlled motorcycles are discovering the visceral thrill of a perfectly tuned Z1, the immediate throttle response, the mechanical symphony of valves and pistons, the raw, unfiltered connection between rider and machine. The final truth. The Z1's legacy extends far beyond its specifications or sales figures. It represents a pivotal moment in motorcycle history, the moment when Kawasaki seized the crown from Honda and refused to give it back. For Honda, the Z1 was a wake-up call. Their engineers had to acknowledge that the CB750, revolutionary as it was, had been surpassed. The Z1 forced them to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about motorcycle design. For Kawasaki, the Z1 was vindication. After years of playing catch-up, they had finally created something truly revolutionary, a machine that didn't just compete with Honda's best, but comprehensively outclassed it in every measurable way. But the Z1's most profound legacy is what it taught the entire industry. That engineering excellence isn't just about technology or specifications. It's about understanding what riders truly want and delivering it without compromise. The Z1 wasn't just a collection of parts. It was a cohesive vision of what a superbike should be. 50 years later, that vision still resonates. Modern superbikes may have twice the horsepower, electronic aids that would seem like science fiction to 1970s riders, and performance capabilities that dwarf the Z1's. But they all owe their existence to that green and black monster that appeared in 1972 and changed everything. The Z1 wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a revolution. A revolution that made Honda engineers reconsider their approach, that transformed an industry, and that continues to inspire riders half a century later. In the pantheon of legendary motorcycles, the Z1 stands alone, not just as a milestone, but as the machine that redefined what a motorcycle could be. This is the true legacy of the Kawasaki Z1900, not just a motorcycle, but a moment in time when everything changed.